Let me first try to put the things, a couple of headlines in terms of the Iraqi energy context. We all know that the Iraq oil and natural gas resources are very, very rich. The numbers we have in our book, you will see, or in the publication, you will see, are already very high. But one shouldn't be misled with those reserves numbers, because Iraq is one of the most unexplored country in the world. Decades and decades there was no exploration activity, and these numbers will definitely increase with the exploration activity starting in Iraq. And on top of that, both the oil and gas production costs are among the lowest in the world. So very high reserves, easy geology, and low costs. Iraq is already the third largest oil exporter, and it has significant plans to expand the production of oil and gas. And when you look at the last 2 years, leave aside the government plans, last 2 years, Iraq already added almost 800,000 barrels per day of oil brought to the markets. And as our executive director mentioned, it already played a significant role in the global oil markets. Natural gas is a resource which is underutilized in Iraq for the time being. More than 60% of the production is flared, especially in the south, and there is a significant role for natural gas to play in Iraqi energy mix and also in the global markets. Electricity is a key issue. Most of the Iraqi citizens don't have access to electricity more than 10 hours per day. A country is so rich in terms of the energy resources, and its citizens don't have electricity entire day, especially in summer. 45 degrees, it is definitely a major problem. And we think there are, of course, many constraints. The main constraint being there is years and years, if not decades, there was a lack of maintenance in the energy infrastructure and damages as a result of wars, political conflicts, and so on. And from a legal point of view, there is a lack of consensus on governance on the hydrocarbon sector between federal government and regional governments, which is a major impediment. And oil is the cornerstone of Iraq's economy. If you look at the other Middle East countries and compare their oil export revenues to their GDP, they are already very high, more than 50% in Saudi Arabia, for example, with a similar population to Iraq. And in Iraq, it is almost 3/4. The oil export revenues to GDP, Iraq's economy, Iraq's destiny is very much linked to its oil revenues. So from our point of view, there are two challenges for Iraq. One, to increase the oil revenues, and second, to diversify its economy away from oil revenues, and as I said, which is perhaps the highest in the oil-producing nations. And we think this is an essential challenge. In our study, we developed 3 scenarios looking at these challenges. We have a central scenario, which we think is the plausible one, but we have also an optimistic scenario, which we call the high case, and we have rather a pessimistic scenario, which we call a delayed case. Let me take you through with some of the findings of the central case. We think the current production, which is about 3 million barrels per day, could reach about 6 million barrels per day in 2020, and then about over 8 million barrels per day in 2035. So from 3 to 6 and from 6 to 8 million barrels per day. And some of you would immediately recognize that this is much lower than the projects, contracted projects, and much lower than the Iraqi government's official targets. But we think this trajectory is plausible when you look at the challenges in front of Iraq, both in terms of the legal framework, investments, and also the problems throughout the supply chain. Bulk of the production will come from the south. 4 supergiant fields in the south will be responsible about 80% of the production, but we also expect that from north in the Kurdish regional government region there is a significant potential to make a contribution, and especially when we consider that that region is currently one of the most explored regions in the world. A lot of activity is going on in that very region. So we expect with these numbers, with this production trajectory, Iraq will be soon overtake Russia and be the second largest exporter of the world. When we look at the export direction, there is a major shift there too. Today, about 50% of the production goes to Asia and other 50% to the rest of the world, Europe, US, and others. And this is going to change very rapidly. We think about 80% of the export will go to Asia and about 20% to the rest of the world. When I say Asia, the main destination is here, China. We think the Iraq export to China can reach to 2 million barrels per day, which is a significant amount of exports to China. And when you look at the Chinese activities in Iraq, you can also have an idea about that. When I talk about this production, about 30% of the production in Iraq will come from the fields, which are either directly owned by the Chinese companies or co-owned, co-led by the Chinese companies. They are either led by the Chinese companies or co-led with other companies by the Chinese companies. And these are, of course, this means a major expansion, and this is again our central scenario, which we think is the plausible one. But what will determine the pace of growth of expansion production? First of all, the political consensus on the governance of oil and the legal framework. There are ongoing discussions about the hydrocarbon law in the country. Recently, a commission has been established, and there are some early encouraging signs, but the when and how this political consensus will be achieved will be crucial to determine the pace of growth. There are also several challenges throughout the supply chain. Transportation is a major issue together with storage. Water, you need water to inject in the oil fields to get the oil out, but Iraq's natural aquifer is not sufficient for this. There is an urgent need to get the water from the sea, from the Gulf, and link it with the fields to get the water, to get the pressure there, and also tremendous need for increasing rigs and expertise, skilled staff is needed. Iraq's long-term oil strategy is crucial. Whether Iraq would like to see all of its fields to ramp up, to increase at the same time, and it means decline at the same time, is a key issue. What kind of profile they would like to see is a key issue. We have, as I said, in addition to our central case, we have a high case, which is more or less in line with the Iraq government's target, which would indicate, instead of 6 in the central case, 9 million barrels per day in 2020. Of course, in order to sustain that production, those challenges have to be dealt immediately, which is definitely a major challenge for the country. And of course, this discussion in Iraq is continuing how to maximize their oil wealth's value today and in the future. Another issue which is also crucial, which will determine the pace of growth of Iraqi production, is the international market conditions. Our executive director highlighted the role of Iraq in the global oil context. There are other, of course, players. How much oil they are going to produce and what will be the global oil demand will also affect the pace of growth of Iraq oil production. Now, we think the Iraq will be responsible about 45% of the growth in the global production alone. This is a major role for Iraq, and of course, this would mean about, compared to current 3 million barrels per day of production, additional 5 million barrels per day of oil growth through 2035. And we think this, our projection here in our central scenario is in line with the global need for Iraqi oil and Iraq's needs for the reconstruction of its economy. And as such, we see that the Iraq will take the lion's share, especially in the next 10 years, of the OPEC production, and therefore will play a crucial role in the oil market worldwide. In terms of natural gas, Iraq is set to play a growing role in the natural gas worldwide. We expect in our central scenario, Iraq production to be around 90 BCM in 2035, and most of them are coming as associated gas in the southern of Iraq with the, from the oil fields, but also we expect an increasing volumes in the non-associated gas in the north will contribute to that. And in terms of costs, Iraq provides one of the lowest cost options in terms of natural gas, and as such can be a significant option for either for Europe through pipelines and or LNG from south of Iraq. And of course, it is an important decision for Iraqi authorities what to do with that gas, because we expect that there will be a strong need for domestic gas demand. And this is Iraq's government, up to Iraq's government to decide, make a priority. First use at home and then export, or directly export and leave it the rest for the country is a choice that the Iraq should put together in this strategy. But from an economic analysis point of view, we think to use it in domestically first and export the rest would be, from an economic point of view, better for Iraq's needs. But in addition, in order to have this, of course, increase in the gas production, to fixing the flaring problem, and at the same time provide incentives for the investors for the new gas development is crucial. As our executive director told you, we not only look at the Iraq's export potential, but the domestic markets. A burning issue in Iraq today is the access to electricity. Today, a substantial amount of electricity demand is not met, and this is definitely a major problem, both economically, socially, and politically in Iraq. We look at all the electricity projects one by one, and what we have found out is that around 2015, if all these projects go in line with the project proposals, the issue of electricity access will be solved, and there will be universal access throughout Iraq, which is, I think, a major step forward for the Iraq's energy policy. And another shift we see is that we expect that natural gas will quickly replace oil, heavy fuel oil used today in the power plants in a substantial manner to provide electricity for Iraq. So natural gas will be the one, and this would help Iraq from an economic point of view, because to use it at home and to sell the oil to the abroad would make much more sense. This production growth in oil and even in gas provide lots of money to Iraq, and as such provides a chance to transform the Iraq's future prospects. We expect that the Iraq will receive on average about 200 billion US dollar each year to the economy, and this is of course increasing throughout the time, but 200 billion on average, and this of course the revenues of this magnitude provides the opportunity to transform the Iraqi economy. Having said that, of course, it is very important to see how these revenues are going to be used in the country. And an efficient and a transparent use of these revenues would be of crucial importance, and whether or not it will also help to diversify the Iraqi energy and economic mix is definitely something to see. But our recommendation is to use this money in a transparent way to diversify the Iraqi economy. And this growth in Iraq, in terms of with the help of the revenues, means that the Iraq GDP will increase in real terms 5 times in about 20 years, which will make the Iraq GDP equal to the Saudi Arabian GDP of today. So a strong and economically strong country is on its way coming in the Middle East. Of course, to make this production, you need significant amount of investments for oil, for gas, and for electricity. And today, the amount of investments in Iraq is about 9 billion US dollar. And in the next years to come, these investments need to increase substantially. And in order to see the increase in the investments, especially in the oil and gas sector, there is an urgent need to have a consensus on the legal framework, and without that amount of investment going from 9 to 20 billion dollar will not be easy. On the other hand, when you look at these investment needs, there are only about 10% of the oil revenues Iraq would get in the next years to come. So investment needs are only about 10% of the oil revenues. Now, up to now, I talked to you about our central case, which is a plausible one, which is not as optimistic as our high case or some of the views expressed by the Iraqi government. But in addition to this central case and our optimistic case, there is another case we look at it which we call the delayed case. If there are those steps, those challenges we outlined are not to be met, what are the implications of that? So we see that the production will grow much slower in a patchy way from 3 million barrels per day today to about 5 million barrels per day in 2035, which would mean that the Iraqi people will lose significant amount of revenues compared to our central case, and it will be definitely bad news for the global oil markets. Without Iraq, markets will be much tighter, and we think this would give a boost, upward pressure to the prices, about $15 upward pressure compared to our central case. Let's finish our remarks by putting our thoughts together. We think with about 45% of the increase in the global oil production, Iraq is pivotal for the global oil markets for the next years to come. And this is definitely already affecting the markets. As I said, in the last 2 years, almost 800,000 barrels per day came to the markets from Iraq. But in order to see that increase in the production, there is a need for a shared vision between the federal government and the regional governments, between the private sector and the public sector, and the investments, export facilities, water facilities, storage facilities have to be carried out in a coordinated and synchronized manner. If this doesn't happen, if there is a delay in the Iraqi production growth, looking at the loss of revenues, this would definitely mean bad news for Iraqi people. But at the same time, the global oil markets can also face tough challenges in the absence of the growth in Iraqi production. We think the Iraq gas has to take its place, will take its place, and will be a part of the domestic energy mix, and also would contribute to the global gas markets, either through pipeline or through LNG, either to Europe or different destinations. And finally, it is our conviction that the oil revenues of Iraq can provide solid foundations for a prosperous country coming in Middle East, which is Iraq. So these are some of the findings of our study.